Recording.
Okay, so we will go to the fifth mantra of the first chapter. So we'll chant Yed Vachanabhyuditam
Yad Chananmuditam
Yena Paga Abhyudhyate
Yena
Yudhyate
Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi
Tadev
Brahma
Brahma
Nedam Yadidam Upasate.
Nedam
So now we are seeing a little more description, the definition of Atma. And we saw yesterday that in the last class that we said that Atma is that which is not known and that which is also not knowable, right? Now when you say know, and in Sanskrit, the knower is called pramata. So prama means to know, and the instrument of knowing is called pramanam. So we have things like eyes, ears, etc. And therefore the pramata, the knower, he uses the instrument of knowing, the pramanam, to know the object. Therefore there is pramata using pramanam to know the prameyam. Right? For example, when the eyes are the pramanam, form or color is the prameyam. When the ears are the pramanam, sound is the prameyam, and so on. So you can get a whole list of objects which can be known, which all fall under the list of prameyam. There is only one thing which you can never classify as prameyam. What is that? That is the pramata. So pramata himself can never be known, but everything is known in the presence of the pramata. Therefore, the pramata's presence is evident in every knowledge. So that's what's being mentioned here, that I don't require any other proof of the presence of the pramata. The very knowledge of any object, the very experience of any object is a proof of the existence of the pramata, the knower. And that's why we say pramata cannot be known. In fact, pramata need not be known, because that pramata is his existence, the existence of pramata is evident in every object that is known. It is in every experience that you have. What is self-evident is that pramata exists. That is why the knowledge is there. Without the I thought having come up, the you thought or the that thought can never be there. Without the first person having been born, the second person or the third person can never be there. And therefore here the teacher is saying that pramata is never knowable. The very attempt to try to know the pramata, who is what? The Atma himself, right? So the very attempt to try to know the Atma is futile, and therefore there is no moksha which comes in time. There's nothing which, there's no concept called moksha which will happen in time, because the Atma is already known. And therefore moksha is nothing but dropping the desire for getting Atma Jnana. The desire for self-realization has to be dropped with the knowledge that that self need not be realized at all. And that is very important thing which we need to understand, that you will never really, in brackets, self-realize, because that self cannot be realized. It need not be realized. Now look at the words. So he said, Yed Vacha Anabhyuditam. So Abhyuditam literally means to rise, right? To get up or to rise. But here it can be taken as to be revealed. So Yed Vacha Anabhyuditam. That Atma, it cannot be the object of your words. Vacha is you're talking, a Shabda Pramana. So yat vacha anabhyuditam, this Atma cannot be described, as an object to the words, to Shabda Pramanam. And yena vag abhyudyate. But yena, because of that Atma alone, vak, your tongue, the instrument of speech, abhyudyate, is able to speak. So a very, very beautiful description. That Atma is that principle which can never be described using the tongue. But you should understand that the usage of the tongue is possible only because of that particular Atma principle, which the tongue is not able to describe. And therefore he says, Tadeva Brahma Tvam Vidhi. Tvam Vidhi, you should know that Tadeva Brahma. What is this Tad? This Tad you have to connect to Yena. That Atma, because of which you are able to speak, Tadeva Brahma. That is Brahman. Tvam Vidhi, you should know. And Nedam Ididam Upasate. Na idam, not this. Yat idam upasate. That which you are worshipping. Very nice little mantra which is saying that whatever you worship, na idam upasate, whatever Lord you are worshipping, that is not Brahman. Tadeva Brahman means that principle by which your tongue is able to speak, that principle which lends consciousness to your tongue so that it can speak, that principle is Atman. Na idam yadam upasate. Not this, na idam, yat idam upasate. That, not this which you are worshipping. Right? So, because it is Sanskrit, the English is a bit clumsy. What it means is this principle, which is Atma, because of which you are able to speak. That principle, which cannot be described by the tongue, by the act of speaking, know that principle to be Atma, to be Brahman, not this entity. Which entity? This entity which you worship. Na idam, not this entity, not this Lord. Which Lord? Yat idam upasate. Which Lord you are worshipping. So anything which you worship, any entity which you worship, involves what? There is a worshipper and there is a worship. So wherever there is a worshipper and there is a worship, remember that worshipped object cannot be Brahman. That is what he's saying. It's a very, very beautiful mantra, very well brought out, and we should, as far as possible, remember it all the time. We should memorize it so that we know exactly what to do in Nivyasanam. Remember that Atma has two statuses, so dual status. One is the natural, the intrinsic status of Atma as Chit, as consciousness. And one is an incidental status of Atma as a knower. What is the difference between the intrinsic status as consciousness and the incidental status as knower? If you were asked to explain in one line, how would you say?
For the incidental status, the Atma requires an object, an Atma.
I'm saying knower, not known.
So the knower is at the Vyashti level, so it requires an individual form or body, whereas the Atma per se is a...
Okay,
formless,
so we'll
all
take
present
your
entity.
answer as valid. In the absence of any anatma, in the absence of the mind or any other anatma, atma status is consciousness alone, pure consciousness alone. When that consciousness gets associated with the mind or with other objects, then the status of pramata is there. Therefore, there's always this dual status which we have to remember. When the world is present, when the universe is present, I am pramata. When the universe is not present, I am pure consciousness. But remember that even when I am pramata, the universe is mithya, and therefore my status as pure consciousness does not get disturbed. That understanding I should have. That's why he says, na idam, not this Rama, Shiva, or Devi, not this Rama, Shiva, or Devi, na idam, yet idam upasate, which you are worshipping here. Whatever you worship, remember that is not the real God, that is not real Brahman. So, yet idam upasate, tat na Brahma. Whatever you worship here is not Brahman. Whichever worship you do, whether you go to temple or you go to church or you go to mosque or you go to pilgrimage, that can never be Brahman. No upasya devata, no entity which is being worshipped is ever the ultimate reality. Then the question is, why should Shastra introduce devas at all? The question is, if what I worship can never be Brahman, why does throughout Karma Kanda Shastra talk to me about devas, upasya devatas, upasyams, upasanas? The answer is that they are all stepping stones. Without the anatma, one can never really appreciate the atma. Therefore, devas are always introduced. And therefore, another corollary here is that we see lots of stories in Puranas, and there are a lot of students who sometimes say that in deep meditation, they got darshan from the Lord. Okay. Again, remember that whatever darshan you get, whenever you say, I've got darshan of the Lord, there is a form. Whenever there is a form, there is finitude. Ananta cannot be there coexisting with the form. Therefore, whatever darshanam I get in meditation, we are not questioning that. You may get the darshan, right? Because Puranas also say that for specific purposes, the Lord takes special forms. So wherever you get darshan, we don't question that darshan. But remember, that is not Brahman, right? And therefore, Shankaracharya says, Brahman is asamvyavaharye, all beyond all transactions. And very interestingly, we define Brahman as Sat Chit Atma, right? What does Sat mean?
Existence.
Existence. Now, interestingly, if you analyze this, use the word Sat, you will be able to appreciate that even the word existence, Sat, can be used only when Anatma is present. In the absence of Anatma, the word existence has no meaning. Does it make sense?
Ji.
Yes, Acharya.
How would you explain? Supposing I said, explain that with everyday experience.
Sleep.
My own existence, the isness principle.
No, when you are saying I exist, Anatma is already there. Because it is the Anatma which enables you to say I.
Right.
When I'm asleep, I can't even say I exist.
When we should, as Vedantic students, we should be very clear about the word sleep. Do you mean dreamless sleep or do you mean sleep with dreams? Sushupti avastha or swapna avastha?
Sushupti.
Yes. So whenever you use, make that distinction, in Sushupti avastha, there is no I. Since there is no first person, there is no anatma. In Sushupti avastha, there is no meaning for the word existence. Sat, that word doesn't have any meaning in Sushupti avastha. And that is why Shankara in his commentary says Nirvisheshe. That Brahman is beyond all descriptions. All descriptions means we talked about the conditions necessary for the usage of words in the last class, right? And we called it what? We use a technical term for the 5 conditions.
Shabda pravritti nimittani.
Shabda pravritti nimittani, right? These are the conditions for verbal communication. So when Shankara says nirvisheshe, beyond all descriptions, means that none of these 5 conditions will be there for a Brahman to be described. And therefore, Brahman is the absolute reality. And from the Paramarthika point of view, remember there is no distinction at all. And therefore, you cannot differentiate or even describe Brahman using the term Sat Chit Ananda. So this refinement in our understanding we should have. When you say Brahman is Sat Chit Ananda, you are talking from Vyavaharika angle. Right? That 3 different attributes, so to say, is from the differentiation at the Vyavaharika level. Existence, consciousness and Ananda. But from the Paramarthika level, you cannot use those words at all. And therefore, any words which are used to describe Brahman, Shankara says, Brahmani samvyavahara pravartante. In that Brahmani, in that Brahman, any words used are samvyavahara from the point of the Vyavaharika view only. And Vyavaharika view means what? Based on the Upadis, right? Vyavahara, the moment you say Vyavaharika, you're talking about Upadis. Therefore, any description of Brahman is based on the Upadis which are present in Vyavaharika. To give an example, now Brahman is described in various Upanishads as Karta, Bhokta, Vijnata, Niyanta, Prashasita. Karta, everybody knows what it means, right? The doer. Bhokta is the experiencer. Vijnata is what? Knower. Niyanta is what? जो नियम देता है नियंता.
Administrator.
Administrator, a controller. And prashasita literally means prashasan karne wala, the ruler, the king, right? So karta, bhokta, vijnata, niyanta, prashasita. This incidentally is a quotation from Upanishad called the Prashna Upanishad. Okay. So that is from which point of view? Is from point of view of the bodies only, right? Vyavaharika. And then when you say, for example, the very famous Vijnanam Anandam Brahma, right? This is Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Vijnanam Anandam Brahma. Consciousness and bliss, happiness is Brahma. This Vijnanam and Anandam, knowledge or consciousness and happiness, is experienced by whom?
By the RC.
By the RC. RC means RM is present or not? Yes.
Yes.
And therefore, we are talking again from the point of view of Anatma only. Remember, all definitions, therefore, Shankara puts it very beautifully. Brahmani samvivahara pravartante. He says, Upadhibihi, only because of the upadhis. Any description which you use to describe Brahman is from the point of view of Anatma only. And that is why, if you want to understand what Nirguna Brahman is, that is why you have to negate all Anatma in your understanding. You cannot negate Anatma physically, because the negator himself has Anatma component, right? But you have to negate Anatma mentally, and therefore when I say Aham Brahma Asmi, I am Brahman, what I am doing is mentally, intellectually, I am excluding the very tool by which I exclude. I exclude the body, of course, but I am excluding the intellect also, which is the very tool by which I am excluding the Anatma. And viditi, you must understand this. This is to be understood. All exclusions are purely intellectual. And there is another reason why physical exclusion is not possible, right? Because every Anatma is pervaded by Brahman, right? Sarvam Brahman. Brahman is there in all Anatma. And therefore, how, and also Brahman is there everywhere. To exclude Anatma physically, you have to take that Anatma to a place where Brahman is not present. Since Brahman is there all over the place, all pervading, how can you remove something from something which is all pervading? It's like saying, I will remove this table from space. You cannot. Wherever you go, space is there. So this conclusion is that you have to exclude, but the exclusion is purely intellectual. Not only that, while excluding, you have to exclude the excluding tool also. The instrument by which you exclude, that itself has to be excluded. The rest of what remains, that is Nirguna Brahman. Okay. Okay, now look at the last quarter. Na idam yadidam upasate. Na idam. So what is this idam? So he says, again Shankara says very, very nicely, he describes each word so that there is clarity in our mind. That is why Shankara Bhashyam is so, important, because once you are studying Shankara Bhashyam, you know exactly what every word means. It is etched into your brain. So, idam, na idam, not this. What is this? This. He says, upadi bheda vishishta. All the objects in creation which are differentiated because of upadi. Upadi bheda. Differences which have come because of upadi only. And upadi is, means in general nama rupa. Therefore, Vishishtam is the differentiation. Upadi Bheda is, which has come into being because of Upadis. He says all differences in creation because of Upadi differences. So, Upadi Bheda Vishishtam. And up to Ishwaradi, including Ishvara, whether it is Hiranyagarbha or Virat or Antaryami, there are Upadi differences. What is the Upadi difference between these three, Virat, Hiranyagarbha and Antaryami?
Virat is the Sthula Prapancha. Hiranyagarbha is the Sukshma, and Antaryami is the Karana Prapancha.
Antaryami is the Karana Prapancha. So there are Anatma Bheda there. That's what he says. Anatma Upadi Bhedaha. The differences in terms of Anatma are always present. And hence, he says, Idam, because of this Upadi Bheda, na Brahma. This Idam can never be Brahman. All that you can see or perceive in this universe, they all have Vyavaharika utility. When they are Devas, when they are Virat, Hiranyagarbha, Antaryami, you can do puja, etc. So, therefore he says, Yat idam iti upasate. Upasate means dhyayante, worshipping. Therefore, any object which you worship is anatma only. And the fact that Brahman, or the other way around, the fact that Anatma is not Brahman is conveyed through this implication by Shruti by saying Tadeva Brahma Tvam Vidhi. That which you are not worshipping, that because of which you can worship, that alone is Brahman. And when, what is that? That is Atma. So it's an implication. If Shruti is saying Atma alone is Brahman, anything which is not Atma is not Brahman. And therefore, obviously, Anatma is not Brahman. Right? Okay. Now there is another problem. So one Purvapakshi objection, one who makes objections, he stands up and says, but you say Sarvam Brahman. When you say Sarvam Brahman, Anatma cannot be excluded. Therefore, how do you reconcile this explanation when you say Tadeva Brahma Tvam Vidhi? Atma alone is Brahman. Obviously, Anatma is not Brahman. How can you reconcile that with the statement that Sarvam Brahman? Because Sarvam Brahman means Anatma cannot be excluded from Brahman. What is the answer?
There it means that it's Atma which is pervading the Anatma.
That everything is Brahman, but not everything. Brahman is everything, but not everything is Brahman.
Anatma is mithya.
Very good. Anatma is mithya. So remember that this idea has to be very carefully understood, because as you go into further Upanishads, you will find this discussion taking place again and again. Why it is important is because only in Vedanta we have the concept of mithya. And therefore in Vedanta there is never a contradiction. Because you can have Brahman and you can have Anatma sitting side by side. They are not opposed to each other because they are different planes of reality. One is Satyam and one is Mithya. The Mithya Vastu can never really be opposed to Satyam Vastu. And that is why other darshanas, they struggle with this concept. Because for them, there is no concept of Mithya. Anatma, Atma, both are real. And because Anatma, Atma, both are real, how can there ever be Advaita? Advaita is possible only when Anatma is Mithya. So this idea has to be very carefully understood. Okay. Now we look at the next mantra, the sixth mantra, which we will chant. Yan manasa namanute
Yanamanute
yena hurmanomatam
Yenahurmanomatam
tadeva brahmatvam vidhi
Tadeva
Brahmatvam
Brahma
nedam yadidam upasate.
Nedanyadam Upasate.
So earlier the pramanam was the tongue, this words, speech, right? Now here the same example is being applied to a different pramanam. And the idea is that when you talked about words, we said that words cannot be used to present Atma as prameyam, an object of knowledge. And the same idea is being said here of this words are a pramanam. That words cannot be used to project Atma as a prameyam, as an object of pramanam. And therefore, even if you change the pramanam, the most powerful pramanam will not be able to present the Atma or Brahman as a prameyam. Why? Because Atma is the pramata, the subject itself. You cannot, by using any sort of method, you cannot present or convert the pramata, the subject, into an object. And therefore he says, Yat manasana manute. That Atma Yat, that Atma, Manasana Manute, which cannot be recognized by the mind, which the mind cannot convert into an object of knowledge. So that is the first part. Yat Manasana Manute, that Atma which cannot be converted into an object of knowledge by the mind. In simple word, that Atma which the mind cannot recognize. But Yena Ahuhu Manomatan. Ahuhu. But it is said, Yena Manomatam, because of which Yena, because of which Atma, Yena Atmena, because of which Atma, Manomatam, the mind becomes an instrument. The mind becomes capable of functioning as a pramanam. Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi, know that Atma, that principle to be Brahman. That principle because of which the mind is able to function as a pramanam. That principle you should know as Brahman. And what is that? That principle is yourself. And as I said earlier, Atma has dual status. Intrinsic status as consciousness, incidental status as pramata. And so it's the same thing is to be repeated here. Na idam yat idam upasate. That Rama, Shiva, Krishna which you worship, that idol or that God which you worship, that is not Brahman. Whatever you worship here cannot be Brahman. No upasya devata is Brahman. What is Brahman is that which enables you to worship. The same idea. It doesn't require any great amount of explanation. It's the same idea which is mentioned in the 5th mantra. And the other next 3 mantras also will mention the same idea. So we will just quickly go through these mantras. We chant the mantra number 7 to 9. So please unmute yourself. Let us chant these 3 mantras. Yat chakshusha na pashyati.
यच्चक्षुषा न पश्यति
चक्षुषा न पश्यति
Yena chakshugamshi pashyati.
येन
येन
चक्षुंषि
चक्षुषांसि
पश्यति
पश्यति
Tadeva brahmatvam vidhi.
तदेव
तदेव
ब्रह्मत्वं
ब्रह्मत्वं
विद्धि
विद्धि
Nedam yadidam upasate.
नेदं
इदं
यदिदम् उपासते
यदिदमुपासते
Yat shotrena sunoti.
चक्षुत्वेन शृणोति
Yena shrotram idagam shrutam.
येन श्रोत्रमिदं श्रुतं
Tadeva brahmatvam vidhi.
तदेव
तदेव
ब्रह्मत्वं
ब्रह्मत्वं
विद्धि
विद्धि
Nedam yadidam upasate.
नेदं यदिदम् उपासते
Yat pranena praniti.
यत् प्राणेन
ज्ञानेन
प्राणेति
प्रणीति
Yena pranah praniyate.
येन
येन
प्राणः
प्राणः
प्रणीयते
प्राणेति
Tadeva brahmatvam vidhi.
तदेव
तदेव
ब्रह्मत्वं विद्धि
ब्रह्मत्वं
Nedam
विद्धि
yadidam upasate.
नेदं यदिदम् उपासते
So these 3 mantras, exactly the same idea. It says yat chakshusha na pashyati. That yat literally means that. So you have to say that Atma chakshusha na pashyati, which can never be seen by the eyes, but yena chakshugamshi pashyati. So this is the gum sound is a particular the anuswara is pronounced as gum in Vedic chanting. So we can just ignore that for time being, and we can say yat chakshum. That gum is basically anuswara. Yat chakshum api pashyati. Okay, but that because of which chakshum, the eyes, they can see. So yena chakshum api pashyati. By that Atma alone, chakshum is second case, the eyes, pashyati, the eyes can see. So yat chakshusha na pashyati, that Atma which can never be seen by the eyes, but because of which Atma, The eyes can do their function of seeing. Tadeva Brahma Tvam Vidhi. Know that Atma to be Brahman. Na idam yadidam upasate. Not whatever you worship here. Whatever Lord you are worshipping in your puja room or in your temple, that is not Brahman. It is that Atma because of which you can see, because of which you can talk. That Atma is Brahman. Then yat shotrena na sunoti yena shrotram idam shrutam. Right? That Atma which can never be recognized by the ears. But yena shrotram idam shrutam. Because of which Atma these ears can hear. Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi. Know that Atma to be Brahman, not any other Lord which you worship in your puja room or in your temple. And the last one, Yat Pranena Praniti, Yenaf Pranam Praniyate, Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi, Nedam Yadidam Upasate. So that now it's a mistake. So here, of course, the word prana has to be interpreted carefully. Now, the context, if you look at the context, what is the first one? The tongue, then the eyes, then the ears. And therefore, Shankara says that in the context of that, prana is to be taken as what? As the grana indriyam, as the organ of smell, the nose. Okay. So contextually, because of the context of the others being jnanendriyas, Shankara says you can take prana as jnanendriyas, as the nose. And therefore, here you're going to say that prana means that which cannot be smelt. That Atma which cannot be the object of your organ of smell, that Atma, because of which you are able to smell, that Atma is Brahman, not that which you worship. That slight difference is there, we must, because otherwise you can say that prana, when you see the context, prana is not responsible for any cognition. And that's why in the context that is jarring. Therefore, we say prana here is nose, the object of smell. Grana. Prana means grana over here. Right? So ultimately what is being said? Atma is aprameyam. Cannot be conceived. Cannot be thought of as an object of any pramanam. Basically because it is without form, without namarupa. Now here, some people say, some darshanas say that because Atma is not available to any of the sense organs, you should suspend your mind and senses in deep samadhi and then you will have darshan of Atma. Right? But it's a mistake to imagine this. Why? There is, and especially Yoga Shastra, for example, Yoga Shastra says that to be able to get an experience in inverted commas of Atman, your mind and senses have to be suspended. So very often the term going beyond the mind and the senses is used. Going beyond your anatma, going beyond mind, going beyond senses. Then only you can experience the Atman. This is used. But this is a mistake. Why is it a mistake?
Because there is still duality, the experience and the experiencer. The experience of having no experience.
Okay. But there is one more reason. What is that?
Atma
Yes,
needs
please.
a medium.
Sorry?
Atma needs the reflective medium to experience. Without that, we cannot experience it.
Okay, one more reason.
It's the very experiencer.
Well,
Hello,
all of
Ravi
you, yes, Nataraj, boliye.
See, by definition, anything that can be experienced cannot be Atma.
Yes.
That is one, that is a particular reason.
Okay. But the reason is that Atma need not be experienced. Why? It is self-evident all the time. Right? And therefore, this idea of saying that I need to suspend the mind senses, I need to go into a particular stage like Samadhi, is unnecessary because there is no experience of Atma possible. Your whole life is an experience of Atma itself. It is evident all the time. Consciousness is never not evident, excepting when you're a Sushupti Avastha. Therefore, trying to go to Samadhi for self-realization is a misconception. It is a futile exercise. Samadhi is not required for consciousness to be evident to you. It is Swaprakashya. It is self-evident. So let me just recall, what is the content of any experience. In any experience, any experience means thought. Experience means a thought, right? In any experience, there are two thoughts. There is, for example, this is a glass, right? So I am experiencing the glass. Now, in that glass experience, there are two thoughts. The first thought is, I know the glass. What is the second thought? We have done all this.
I know the glass.
Sorry?
I know the glass.
That is the first thought. What is the second thought?
Hello, Raviji.
Yes, Nataraji.
Can see the glass. Having sighted it, I have to, in my mind, it goes back and, this is what a glass is like. So
Yes.
the form, color, and other things comes through the sense organs of perception, and then the knowledge comes.
Excellent. So very good. So I'll put it different words. The first thought is, I know the glass.
Idam vritti and aham vritti.
Aham vritti. Exactly. So the first thought is, I know the glass. That is the idam vritti, the glass vritti. The second thought is, I know that I know the glass. That is aham vritti. Right? So this you must remember. Whenever you know something, there is, I know this something. That is the idam vritti. And then there is the consciousness aspect. I know that I know this object. That is aham vritti. The first involves, I know the pot. The pramata is in play. Right? I know that I know the pot. The Sakshi Chaitanyam is in play. That is why in the pramata involvement, idam vritti is there. In the Sakshi Chaitanyam involvement, aham vritti is there. Right? And having known both these things, why do we always come around to this idam vritti, aham vritti? Because for a Vedantic student, the sadhana is to focus on the aham vritti, not the idam vritti. I need not focus on the pramata. I have to focus on that because of which I know that I am the pramata. That is Sakshi Chaitanya. That is the sadhana. Okay. So these are the 5 verses which basically, present the Atma as something which is the cause of everything, but never the object of any knowledge. Now, I said earlier also that in this particular bhashyam, or in a particular Upanishad, Shankara has written 2 bhashyams. One is Pada Bhashyam, which is a word-to-word commentary, and one is called a Vakya Bhashyam, which is a line-to-line commentary, sometimes verses-to-verses commentary. So it's interesting that while in his Pada Bhashyam, he goes into all these details, in his Vakya Bhashyam, Shankara sums up these last 5 mantras very simply in a few lines. So he says, and it's interesting because that's the real, takeaway from this last 5 mantras. Pada Bhashyam is good for us because it makes us understand word by word. But when you take away, when you remember, the Vakya Bhasham is better. So Shankara says, the summary of the last 5 mantras are simply this, that Brahman is Sarva Karananam Avishyam. Avishashyam means not the subject of any Karanam. Sarva Karananam Avishayam. Vishayam is subject, object rather over here. Karana object is object of a particular Indriya. Sarva Karananam Avishayam means the Brahman is not the Vishayam of any object of any of the Karanams, any of the Indriyas. So all the Indriyas, including the Manaha, are not capable of converting Brahman into an object. Sarva Karananam Avishayam. And he says, because all these Indriyas, they are capable of transactions and they have corresponding objects, Vishayas, only because of the presence of the consciousness nature of Brahman. So it's a Nitya Vijnana Swarupa Avabhasadaya. Because of the consciousness nature of Brahman, eternal conscious nature of Brahman, because of that alone, these sense organs are able to function. This is the meaning of the sloka. Very simple. In one simple line, he has said that all the 5 mantras mean only one thing, that Brahman cannot be the object or the prameyam of any of these pramanams, but Brahman is that because of which these pramanams can function. What we have said in so much of the class, Shankara expresses in half a line. And he quotes 2 or 3 mantras, one of which I will quote for you. Kshetram Shetri Tatha Krishnam Prakashayati Bharata. It is Pratehe. Which means what? Where is it from in the first case? First question.
Bhagavad Gita,
Bhagavad Gita, which chapter?
the 13, I think.
13th chapter. Kshetram Shetri Tatha. What does it mean? The Shetri and the
So,
Kshetram are involved. Shetri is what?
Shetri is Atma, Brahman.
Shetri is Atma, Brahman. Kshetram is what?
Kshetram is Anatma.
Anatma, the universe. So Kshetram Shetri Prakashayati. The Shetri, the Atma, Brahman, Kshetram Prakashayati, reveals the whole universe. That's the Shruti support. And of course, he quotes from Mundaka also. Tasya Bhasa. What is that mantra?
Sarvamidam Vibhati.
If everything in this world is revealed by the light of Brahman alone. So 2 quotes he gives. One is from Gita, Smriti, and one is from Upanishad, which is Shruti. And both he says, this is a support for my interpretation that Brahman alone reveals everything, but Brahman cannot be revealed by anything. Very nice little chapter it was. Okay, so with this we'll stop for today, because the next chapter is basically a Mananam chapter. So I'd like to take it up fresh in the next class. Any questions we are open for? Remember, these mantras can be used for Nididhyasanam again and again. First, listen to the commentary, write it down, make the notes, understand them thoroughly. Then in Nididhyasanam, you can use these mantras.
Acharya ji, in the orders of reality,
Yeah.
Advaitam is only at Paramarthik level, because transactional it will always be
Mithya.
Mithya.
Transaction is always Mithya. So that is why Advaitam is always intellectual. At Vyavaharika, there will always be duality. You have to resolve that Dvaitam by understanding that Vyavaharika is Mithya. And what is Mithya doesn't really exist. And therefore it is Satyam. That is the understanding.
Thank you, Acharya. It's very tough.
It's very tough, but well, we are only in the second Upanishad, so we have plenty to go. Slowly, slowly, you'll find yourself soaking in it. So we stop with this. Yeah.
Can I ask one question here?
Yes, Rashmi ji, boliye.
In the verse, we said prana verse, we said ki pranasya praneti. Okay. So we said it is the smelling power.
Yeah.
Can we say it is the power behind the indriyas?
You can, and that is the interpretation that Shankara takes in his Vakya Bhashyam. So Shankara's interpretations are different in Pada Bhashyam and Vakya Bhashyam. In Vakya Bhashyam, he takes prana as grana. In Pada Bhashyam. In Vakya Bhashyam, he takes it as prana itself. It ultimately the meaning is not changed. That because of which prana has the function, has the power to function, the power to give functions to all the other indriyas. But that prana cannot make Atma function.
Yes.
But there's a slightly, jarring, because in trying to make Atma function is indicating that Atma is Karta. So that's why Shankara takes the other interpretation.
That's exactly what I mean. Ki because of this, our anatma is Karta, but not the Atma is not.
Because of which Anatma is Karta. Anatma gets the power to function because of prana alone. But prana itself doesn't do any function.
Okay.
Either way, the final meaning is what? It cannot be objectified. But it is a reason because of which, or other Atma cannot be revealed, but it is a reason because of which everything else is revealed. Yeah.
Everything else is revealed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So it's about time actually now that we stop saying Atma cannot be revealed. You just convert that into I cannot be known, but I am the reason why everything else is known. Once that conversion takes place in your thinking, whenever you hear the word Atma or Brahman, you simply replace by Aham. And once you do that, you will find that over the next 2 years or so, while we are doing the Upanishads, things make more sense. If you continue to use the word Atma and Brahman, you are continuing to bring an artificial distinction between you and Brahman.
Thank you.
Okay. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience.
Om Namah Shivaya.